But if you look at the last 20 years, in total returns and in rent growth and in occupancy rates, the industrial asset class pretty much beats office, retail, and multifamily in each of those categories: total returns, rent growth per year, and occupancy rates year over year. So that's one thing, to look back historically in America. This is the United States, of course. So from a very macro level, it's a very stable asset class. And then if you look at, there's a lot of reasons, even during COVID with the supply chain disruptions, the advancements in technology that are changing the way businesses think about their supply chains, robotics, and all of that. Going forward, we're still very bullish on it. So, just to talk through.
And I would highlight too with that if you look at from a data set, the total returns, rent growth, and occupancy rates, if you look at those three buckets in the asset classes of industrial, office, retail, and apartments, so really the four biggest asset classes within real estate, industrial has led out of those four asset classes in all three categories. So it's a very strong, it only was accelerated through COVID, obviously, with some of the things we're going to talk through today being the driving factors. But it's historically been a strong asset class and continues to be as you look at where we're at today and forward-looking data where we're going. Industrial and apartments really tend to be the darlings of real estate, they call it, right? I mean, obviously everyone knows the case for office is down in the dumps and not really a bright future painted so far for office. But those are really the two strongest asset classes historically and forward-looking. And industrial, even in most data sets, beats apartments.
Yeah, you're not wrong, right? And the case for multifamily remains strong. I have no doubt. I'm bullish on it. We own some apartment buildings. There's not enough roofs to be over everybody's head, right? We are becoming more of a renter nation, so totally get multifamily. I also like neighborhood strip malls as well. We own one. We love it. It's a great asset that we have. But if you look at industrial, you start to look at the underlying sort of headwinds that or tailwinds, I should say, tailwinds pushing this asset class forward. First and foremost, as nobody would disagree with, there's an e-commerce boom that's been happening, and it's only continuing to grow. So in the U.S. alone, online spending surged to over $1.1 trillion in 2023, which was a 7.6% increase from 2022, and there's really no signs of it slowing down. So, e-commerce, you think about it, these businesses, they need places to make the stuff. They need places to store the stuff. They need places to be able they need to get closer and closer to their end customer. And so there's a lot of reasons why e-commerce translates into more demand for industrial space.
And I think with that too, a lot of people might just think, okay, well, e-commerce, that just means the big Amazon warehouses, and that's what drives industrial demand for e-commerce. But like you said, I mean, think about the pallet that gets shipped on, when the product arrives to Amazon, right? It's on a pallet. That pallet needs to be made somewhere and stored somewhere, right? It's one of our tenants actually is a pallet refurbisher. The plastic that wraps around the pallets, right? That needs to come from somewhere. There's so many more pieces in the process than just the end product landing in an Amazon warehouse and then going to your doorstep, right? So that's where a lot of stuff we do, right? We don't own Amazon facilities or Amazon buildings, right? We're more so, our tenants are a lot of the products that take place within that process.
Exactly. And that's only going to continue to grow, from what we can tell. Another one is the reshoring movement, sort of made in America. They call it onshoring, reshoring, nearshoring. Nearshoring would be sort of like, Mexico. But throughout COVID, what happened was supply chains got majorly disrupted. And if you had your product was all the way across the Pacific Ocean or in Asia Pacific or whatever, right? Like you saw some major disruptions. And so a lot of companies are starting to bring their manufacturing back to the United States and their supply chain back to the United States or closer to the United States so that they can be as I mentioned before, you want to be as close to the end customer as possible. You want, I mean, someday Amazon wants you to be able to buy now one click, and they want to be able to zip a drone over and just drop it in your yard. Forget this same day. It's like, hey, same hour or 10 minutes, you can have this thing, right? And that is, it sounds crazy, but that's sort of the future of where things are going. They passed the CHIPS and Science Act in August of 2022, and that has really incentivized companies to reshore their manufacturing facilities and operations back to the United States. We're seeing that locally, but that's only going to sort of continue as companies got smart and realized once they offshored and outsourced all of their operations way across seas to get sort of cheaper labor. They realize that that's not a good thing if there's a major disruption in their supply chain, and they're getting a lot of revenue leakage out of that by some sort of huge disruption that happens, such as COVID, right?
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece that's going to drive this from a economic standpoint, right? And that's just going to drive more demand for these warehouse spaces. And then the fourth point within again, looking at kind of the macro industrial space of why we like it, long-term triple net leases. So the first piece of that long-term, generally in industrial, you're going to see, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15, 20-year long leases, right? So they're very long-term leases compared to, right, if we're comparing it to multifamily, it's generally a year-long lease, right? So there's going to be more turnover. That being said, there is, that does come with the downside of it's not as easy to lease up, right? So there's certainly things there. We won't go too into the weeds on that. That might be a different episode, but long-term leases. Second part of that, triple net leases specifically. So what triple net means is the tenant pays for all of the operational costs of the building, right? So the tenant's going to be paying for property taxes, insurance, snow removal, if the toilet breaks, right? They're taking care of the building. The only thing the landlord's responsible for is structural. So if the roof breaks or you got to replace the parking lot, that's going to fall on the landlord. But really these buildings, right, long-term triple net leases, you find a tenant for a 5, 7, 10-year lease, it's pretty turnkey from that point, right? You got your rent set. You're already going to know what your numbers are. It's predictable cash flow. You're going to forecast out the roof needs to be replaced 5 years from now. You can prepare for that. So it's very much more so a predictable cash flow business compared to, again, comparing it to multifamily, where it can be a little bit more year by year. Things are changing. Tenants are moving out. Again, we like multifamily as well, just kind of highlighting some of the differences on why we personally prefer this asset class.